Good morning and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going through a process of elimination to decide which bike I'm going to buy for my wheelie project. So let's get started. How am I going to drink my tea? Hey love, can you bring us a straw? Alright, so let's start with the bikes that we've eliminated. Suzuki DRZ 400. Probably quite good for me because they're not too tall, but they're pretty heavy and they just don't have enough Weet-Bix. So I'll cross that one off the list. The next one would be some form of Ducati, hypermotard maybe, something like that. Well, problem with those is they're too expensive, too heavy. Really, it's just so far out of my price range I can't even consider it. Then we've got an Aprilia. Now the Aprilia is a bit like a crack addict. Very unreliable and bound to shaft you at some stage in the future. So I've crossed that one off the list. The last one of those kind of things would be maybe a Yamaha in some form that's been put into supermotard. But really, I'm not that keen on the colour blue, so I've crossed that one off my list. So that leaves me now with two main kind of choices, I think. The Husqvarna and the KTM. Now, I know that KTM supplies the engines for the Husqvarna. So, you know, I love the KTM engines. I think they're very strong and almost bulletproof. And what it comes down to there really is I just prefer orange to lemon. So yes, I am going to choose a KTM. I just have to decide which one. And I'd like to invite you now to come down to my garage where I'm going to unleash an analog graphics package to help me go through the choices and pick a winner. Right, let's go downstairs. Okay, so here are my two choices. The KTM 500 EXC and the KTM 690 SMC-R. I think we'll start by having a look at the pros and the cons for each model. First, on the plus side for the KTM 500 EXC is it has a great power to weight ratio. So weighing in at around 100 and something kgs and close to 70 horsepower, this is it's a ready to race kind of beast, this one. The next element on the KTM 500 EXC would be its ability to power wheelie. I've had a 520 EXC in the past, and that could lift the front wheel right up to 4th gear just using the power of the motor. So, power wheelie. Next point in the KTM 500 EXC's favour is really to do with weight. It's lighter by a third than the KTM 690, and I guess if you're doing stunts, low weight is obviously an advantage. Last of the pros for the KTM, it's nimble. I mean, having a light bike must be easier to do tricks like circle wheelies, stoppies, stuff like that. So nimble is pretty good. Or did I say that was the last one? No, it's not. Okay, point number 5 for the KTM is really just availability. There are lots of 500 EXCs around. They're a very popular bike, and so when it comes to resale, there's a much bigger market for them than some of the other more specialist options. Now, the cons. The first one. Well, being an EXC, it's going to cost some money to convert it to a supermoto. And by the time you buy a new set of wheels, you sort out your suspension, you know, there's a significantly high cost to convert for the 500 EXC. The next point, which I find a bit of a drawback, is no rev counter on the 500 EXC. I just love being able to see what revs the bike is at. Okay, so no rev counter, that's a distinct disadvantage as far as I'm concerned. Number 3 would be not as good on the highway. I mean, they seem to be very, very twitchy. So if you're doing lots of cruising along the motorway and stuff like that, it just feels like you've got a dirt bike on the road. So I'm not so keen on them based on highway running. The last point, and probably the most significant of the drawbacks of the 500 EXC, is the service intervals. I mean, you have to change the oil so often on these things, and if I'm going to be using my bike as a bit of a daily driver, I won't want to have to change the oil so often. So yeah, too frequent and just a pain in the bum, really. Alright, so let's go and have a look now at the KTM 690. Starting off with the pros, I'd say that the first thing in its favour is that it is already in a supermotard format, so I don't have to do a whole bunch of changes. Oh look, I spelt already wrong. There's meant to be an extra A in there. Okay, so the supermoto format is great. Basically buy it, take it out on the road straight away. Awesome. Second thing in its favour, longer service intervals. So if I bought a 690, I'd have to run it in for 1,000 kilometres before it has its first service, and then it's basically every 10,000 kilometres after that, which you know, that's way easier to cope with. Next one is a bit of an odd one. It's around its ability to convert to enduro format fairly easily. Rally Raid products make all sorts of add-ons and extras so that you can take an enduro bike and turn it into a basically an adventure tourer, and that has some appeal for me. Next one, good on the highways. It's a heavier bike, it's going to sit there better at higher speeds, particularly if you're doing 100 kilometres per hour plus. So I think I'd much rather ride the 690 on the motorway than the 500 EXC. Now the cons. Let's have a look. What have we got here? First one, well, the bike is basically an elephant on steroids. It's just so heavy. And I think when it comes to tricks and stunting and stuff like that, that heaviness will be a bit of an issue for me because I'm so small. Well, short and fat would probably be a better description. The next issue, which is a bit of a problem for the KTM 690, has to do with the good old fuel tank mounted in the rear of the bike, very close to the hot exhaust silencer. And that, as far as I'm concerned, is if you drop your bike and create lots of sparks and you get fuel coming out of the fuel tank, it's an absolute fire risk. Last one on the list. This probably goes to both of these bikes, to be fair, but you know, they're taller than the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, one of the world's tallest buildings, and for a guy like me who's got short legs, that is a bit of a struggle. So when you combine the weight with the height, I think that would be a real downside of the KTM 690 for me. However, there we have it. So I'm going to make my decision based on those elements. So really what I think it's going to come down to is which is going to be the best bike for me. I've got short legs, I'm older, so weight is actually an issue. So we can go for the lighter, more nimble 500 EXC, or the probably more roadworthy KTM 690 SMC-R. So I'd really like to invite you to join me in the next video where I'll reveal which bike I have chosen. So if you want to join me for that, how about you hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up if you think that I'm making the right choice between those two bikes, and we'll see you in the next episode. Hey love, where's that straw?